Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodananda Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada ki Radha Madhav ki Jaya Dwaj Prabhu. Can I ask you before we begin to help me? Can you go on Facebook and see if this broadcast is going live?
Oh yeah.
Can you just check for me? I mean, I'm pretty sure it is, but
let me check.
Right. Anyway, we'll begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayana Namaskrityam.
Naram Chaiva Narotamam.
Naram Chaiva Narotamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayet.
Tato Jayamudirayet.
Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu.
Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Tyuttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Tyuttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. You're sideways. Sideways.
Sideways. I don't know how to adjust that because it's very strange. You know, I opened the...
There's an app. There's an app that it regulates the...
You need an app. Okay, let me just change the screen like this. Oh, I see. 1 second. I'll be able to... This is better?
No.
Now, how is it? How is it now?
No, now it's, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to figure out in the future. I thought...
There's an app for that. You just download the app and that's it.
Okay. We'll do that later. So I have to leave at 8:30 to attend a meeting.
Yeah.
So let's begin, right?
Yeah.
Srimad Bhagavatam 1.749. I'll just read the Sanskrit and the translation. We don't have to do it responsibly. Sutta uvacha dharmyam nyayam sakarunam nirvyalikam samam mahat raja dharma suto rajnyaf pratyanandad vacho dvijaha padapataha
Padapataha.
Sutaha Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Goswami said,
Sutta Goswami said,
Dharmyam,
Dharmyam,
in accordance with the principles of religion.
and according to the principles of religion.
Nyayam,
Nyayam,
justice.
justice.
Sakarunam,
Sakarunam,
full of mercy.
full of mercy.
Nirvyalikam,
Nirvalikam,
without duplicity.
without duplicity.
Without duplicity in dharma.
Without duplicity in dharma.
Samam,
Samam,
equity.
equity.
Mahat,
Mahat,
glorious.
glorious.
Raja,
Raja,
the king.
the king.
Dharma Sutaha,
Dharma Sutaha,
son.
son.
Rajnyaha,
Rajnyaha,
by the queen.
by the queen.
Pratyanandat,
Pratyanandat,
supported.
supported.
Vachaha,
Vachaha,
statements.
statements.
Tvijaha,
Vijaha,
O Brahmanas.
O Brahmanas.
O Brahman.
Okay. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthir fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir, who was the son of Dharmaraj or Yamaraj, or you can say Dharmaraja or Yamaraja in Sanskrit, fully supported the words of Queen Draupadi in asking Arjuna to release Ashwatthama. Excuse me. One could not tolerate the humiliation of a member of a great family. Arjuna and his family were indebted to the family of Dronacharya because of Arjuna's learning the military science from him. If ingratitude were shown to such a benevolent family, it would not be at all justified from the moral standpoint. The wife of Dronacharya, who was half the body of the great soul, must be treated with compassion, and she should not be put into grief because of her son's death. That is compassion. Such statements by Draupadi are without duplicity, because actions should be taken with full knowledge. The feeling of equality was there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience. A barren woman cannot understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was herself a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was quite to the point. And it was glorious because she wanted to show proper respect to a great family. Excuse me. So, wow. First of all, in the purport, there's dharmyam nyayam in the verse, not in the purport, I'm sorry. Dharmyam nyayam sakarunam nirvyalikam. Nirvyalikam is in the important word, without duplicity in dharma. So dharmyam pratyanandat. Raja Yudhishthir supported the words of Draupadi because they were in accordance with dharmyam, the principles of religion. So one must say, well, What are these principles of religion? So Prabhupada was propagating the Vedic religion. He was not propagating the Abrahamic religions, even if he at times spoke words of appeasement about the Western religions. Now, I asked Prabhupada in Vrindavan on a morning walk in September 1975, is it better to worship the one God of the Western religions or better to worship the demigods? And Prabhupada's response was, it is better to worship the demigods because by following the Vedic system, you get gradual elevation. And then he told me, these religions, the Western religions, are the religions of the meat eaters. Now, we know that among Hindus, there are meat eaters. In fact, the majority of Hindus eat meat, majority. So what does it mean when Prabhupada said the Western religions, when he meant the Western religions means Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are the religions of the meat eaters. What he meant was the cow eaters, because in Vedic culture, the cow can never be killed, much less slaughtered for its meat. Now, there were statements by Prabhupada, I don't have them in my hand, but I remember Prabhupada saying that if you want to eat the meat of a cow, wait till the cow dies naturally, and then you can eat the meat of the cow. Don't cause pain to the cow. And we see when animals are killed, it's very painful. That same pain is not evident when a vegetable is plucked, out of the ground in some cases, in the cases of potatoes, carrots, beetroot, radishes, and the vegetables that grow underground, they don't let out a cry and scream like a human being or a cow. Well, even that applies to the pigs, the goats, and the chickens. Generally, human society today eats these animals, the non-vegetarian section of human society. I'm not condoning it, but Prabhupada in another place said that if people want to eat the meat of animals, let them eat the meat of unimportant animals like goats, pigs, and chickens. Now, when I say this, it doesn't mean I'm advocating it. Also, Prabhupada was against the slaughterhouse. Now, when I say Prabhupada, he's representing the Vedic viewpoint. He did not invent his own ideology, which some devotees in ISKCON will tell you. I don't want to mention any names. We're talking philosophy here. But we are followers of Vedic culture, and Prabhupada was a teacher of Vedic culture. And Prabhupada wrote that and stressed that. He quoted the famous verse of Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.101. And Rupa Goswami quoted the Brahma Yamala, which is an obscure Vedic literature. But there in that obscure Vedic literature, Rupa Goswami pointed out, and Prabhupada quoted this many times, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpata Yaiva Kalpate. The meaning is bhakti, devotion to the Lord, the devotion to Lord Krishna, is according to Shastra Vidhi, should be according to Shastra Vidhi. If it is not, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina, without the Vidhi, the system, the instructions of Vedic literature, which means Shruti as the Vedas, Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda. Smriti are the Dharma Shastras like Manu Samhita. Excuse me. Puranas like the Bhagavatam that we're reading today. Adi. Puran Adi means the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and other histories like Harivamsha, etc. Pancharatra, there are 140 or 150 Pancharatra Agama Shastras which only members of the Ramanuja Sampradaya study. We have Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is a condensed form of Pancharatra, and the Madhvas have Tantra Sar, but the Pancharatras exist. Narada Pancharatra, we call it sometimes. Bharadwaj Samhita is one of those 140 Narada Pancharatras. So you have Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharatra, Vidhim, the system taught in all of these Vedic literatures, Vina, without Utpata Yaiva, it is just a disturbance in society. It causes a disturbance. So people may make a show of devotion to God like the Abrahamic religions, like the religions of the West. They go to the church or the synagogue or the masjid, the mosque. They pray to God, but they're not following the Vedic system. And so therefore, they just cause a disturbance. We see that the fanaticism, even those who are fanatics, more Islamic fanatics than the others, but in history, Christian fanaticism was a disturbance to society. All fanaticism where violence is adopted to force people to follow these so-called religions is a disturbance to society. Now, any devotion to God, whether it's those who follow the Vedic system, well, if they follow the Vedic system, they won't cause a disturbance. That's what this verse means. So now, how does it apply to today's verse? Dharmyam nirvalikam. Dharma should be without duplicity. And dharma in the Bhagavatam means Vedic Sanatan Dharma. It doesn't mean the dharma of the Western religions. So Vedic dharma, the cow is one of the mothers. A mother is Matri Devo Bhava. Mother should be respected on the level of a god. Devaha it can also be a demigod, it can also be the supreme god. So Matri Devo Bhava, these are Upanishadic mantras. Pitri Devo Bhava, the mother and the father should be seen just like a demigod or just like God. Sakshad Haritva, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote, just like Hari, the Guru, Acharya Devo Bhava. So here, this verse, especially in the purport, Prabhupada remembers that Dronacharya, being the Guru who taught Vedas and the Dhanurveda, Prabhupada mentions the military science, but in the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 45th chapter, 33, 34, 35, we see Krishna's Acharya, Sandipani, taught the military science, but he also taught the Vedas, he taught logic. And so the Acharya teaches all of these things. The Vedas are studied, the Vedangas are studied, and the Dhanurveda, the military science. So Ashwatthama, after the battle of Kurukshetra, 5,000 years ago, slaughtered the sons of Draupadi and thousands of others. This is according to the Mahabharata. And in the Bhagavatam. And in this chapter, we see that Arjuna and Krishna captured Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, and brought him to the court of the king Yudhishthira for punishment. And Arjuna wanted to punish him with Mrityu Danda, the death sentence. But Draupadi, the wife of the 5 Pandavas, intervened, and Yudhishthira supported Draupadi. That's what we have today. Because grief should not be caused to a great Acharya's wife, what to speak of the great Acharya. So here we should note that all of the great Acharyas are men, but they're supported by their wives. And that's why the wives are considered half, the better half in English. Women have their own duties, and their duties were not to be kings. But the gender equality outlook is very happy that the United States now has a vice president who's a woman. But Prabhupada wrote in one of his purports, 4/16/23, that wherever a woman is in the executive head, the people are most, it is regrettable and the people are unfortunate. These are Prabhupada's words. Of course, we can ignore them. I'm not saying to ignore them. I'm not ignoring them, but there are quite a few, I shouldn't mention any names, but devotees in our movement who think we should ignore what Prabhupada wrote about women. You see, this verse is praising a woman, Draupadi. High praise. And there's high praise for Kripi. Kripi is the sister of Kripacharya and the wife of Dronacharya. There's a verse, I'm not sure where it comes from in Sanskrit. Yatra naryaha pujante ramante tatra devataha. Where women are respected, the devatas are pleased, the demigods are pleased. So Vedic culture teaches that women should be respected, but at the same time, Prabhupada has written in his purport to Bhagavad Gita 16:7 that women are like children, and therefore they must be protected in their youth by their father, in their married life by their husband, in the old age after the husband passes away by their grown-up sons. And Prabhupada wrote in the same purport that there's a puffed up conception of womanly life. He writes like that. Now in the Vedic times, there was not this puffed up conception of womanly life. Why? Because women knew that they had their own duties as women. You see, a man cannot become a mother. Only a woman can be a mother. A man can be a father. A woman cannot be a father. These things are called gender distinction. But today, there is a great movement all over the world in modern society for gender equality. And we see, women prime ministers, women presidents, and we have in ISKCON some places, where they want to have women temple presidents and etc. This was not done by Prabhupada in his lifetime. Well, there was one exception. When the husband ran away, who was the temple president, Prabhupada told the wife, you be the president now. One time. But the rule is that women being mothers, and this whole verse is exactly about this idea. Draupadi was a mother who lost her sons, and she didn't want that the Guru Patni, the wife of Dronacharya, should similarly have to grieve over the loss of her son, who was captured by her husband Arjuna and who wanted to put him to death. So Sakarunam. She was full of mercy. Dharmyam nirvalikam. She wanted to follow the principles of Dharma without duplicity. And Yudhishthir supported Draupadi. So this type of feminine sentiments were respected in Vedic culture. Not that women were disrespected, but Lord Krishna himself says it's a lower birth. In Bhagavad Gita 9:32, he says, Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye pisyu papayonayaha. So papayonayaha means those births that are obtained due to sinful activities. Papas. Striyaha, women. Vaishyas. Vaishyas.
8 o'clock.
Tata Shudraha. So women, Vaishyas and Shudras, the majority of human society are Shudras, but they are born according to some papas they have done in a Purva Janma, in a previous birth. This is the Vedic concept. This is the concept Prabhupada taught. Prabhupada did not change the Vedic concepts. Prabhupada propagated the Vedic concepts, but it's a fact that at certain times, Prabhupada, adopting utility as the principle, made certain statements of appeasement, because he saw that in modern society, and this has been going on for 100 or 200 years, the struggle for gender equality is very strong. So that doesn't mean that we should change the Vedic culture to accommodate modern ideas, which are anti-Vedic. Now, how do we convince our own people that what Prabhupada was teaching is something different from the modern ethos? And how to do that? Well, those who are sincere, who really want to know what Prabhupada taught, will understand. They'll understand. They'll see that Prabhupada made two types of statements. He made concessional appeasement statements due to time and circumstance, but he also, in many, many places, advocated Varnashram Dharma. His purport of Gita 16:7, his purport in a number of places, he writes, according to Shastric injunction, sanctioned in Vedic literature. For Bhagavatam 4:12-32, he writes, according to Shastric injunctions, and in 3:24-40, Prabhupada writes, sanctioned in Vedic literature. So Prabhupada, and there are many, many other places where Prabhupada propagates, and earlier I quoted from the Brahma Yamala, Rupa Goswami quoted that bhakti must be performed according to the system set down in Vedic literature. That system was followed in India for thousands of years. And in this democracy in India, which is a concoction, which doesn't follow Dharma Shastras, it is not Dharmyam Nirvalikam. It is not according to the principles of Vedic Dharma. It's just some modern, concoction. That's what Prabhupada writes in his purport to Bhagavatam 3:24-40. So-called spiritual societies in modern times concoct that women can take sannyas. He says because there is no sanction in Vedic literature for women to take sannyas. If there was sanction, Kardama Muni would have taken Devahuti with him when he left the home. Instead, he entrusted her to his son Kapila, being a woman. So Draupadi was a woman who was full of compassion, She wanted to act in accordance with the principles of religion. Sutta Goswami, this is the translation. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthir fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. Not that just because she was the queen that it was accepted, but because her words were in accordance with the principles of religion, Vedic Sanatan Dharma. Therefore, they were accepted by Yudhishthir. Not that, oh, the king can do anything. As we saw here in the United States, the outgoing president thought that he could do anything and he didn't have to act in accordance with the Constitution. Otherwise, he wouldn't have advocated to his followers to attack the Capitol building. I'm sorry if I'm talking about modern politics, but the Vedic kings, Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu, they were Rajarshis because they studied Vedas and because they followed Vedic Dharma. And nowadays, you're supposed to follow the Constitution, which is a concoction of, modern men, whether it's the United States Constitution, the Indian Constitution, or any Constitution. This is just our opinion. We're not calling for a revolution and armed insurrection. No, we're not calling for that. What we're calling for is study the Vedic scriptures, learn what is an ideal society. This was Prabhupada's message. Prabhupada's message was not that we should adopt what is so popular in modern society. The armed insurrection that almost took place here, 10 days ago or whatever, was extra constitutional. So, it has aroused a lot of those people who participated have been arrested by the FBI for good reason. So the point is that there are certain principles of Vedic culture, and not killing Ashwatthama was in accordance with those principles. Now, those principles have to be considered very seriously. Very seriously. And they have to be studied. And that is the Vedic educational syllabus. You study the Vedas, you study the Vedangas, you study the Dharma Shastras, which may be a specialty, but the basic education was Vedas. And if you learn Vedas later on, you would come to understand the teachings of Vedas. And therefore, this is called Vedic Sanatan Dharma. Hinduism is a modern English term. Just like there are many words in English that describe something in another language that have a totally different, different words are used. And so the words in Sanskrit, Vedic Sanatan Dharma, those religious principles that come from the Vedas. So one has to study the Vedas to learn them. And if he hasn't studied the Vedas, he's not fit. Now, our acharyas saw that there was a paucity of brahmanas, and that the brahmanas who claimed to be brahmanas only on the basis of birth didn't study the Vedic principles, didn't know what Vedic Dharma was, and therefore they gave Brahminical initiation to non-Brahmins. That wasn't the system, but not only our acharyas believe that one can become a Brahmin by training, but there are others in India also who believe that, many others. But we should really know that the training is to learn Vedic literature. Now, Prabhupada used to quote the verse from the Upanishads, Tad Vijnanartam sa gurum evabi gachet. One must go to a guru to learn what is self-realization, vijnana, vijnana. That means realized knowledge, self-realization. But the rest of the verse he also quoted, Samit Panihi, with wood in hand, Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. Shrotriyam means that the guru, Tad Vijnanartam Sa Guru Meva Bigachet, go to the guru, Shrotriyam, who knows the Vedas. Shruti, Shrotriyam means one who studied the Vedas. Brahmanishtam, he's fixed in the absolute truth. He understands Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaneti. He knows that the supreme Brahman, the absolute truth, Ishvara, Ishavasyamidam Sarvam, is the controller of everything. And he's given the Vedas for guidance for human society. So, if we didn't study the Vedas, we are not qualified to be Brahmanas. Janmana Jayate Shudra, we're all born Shudras, even those born in the higher castes. Samskaro Bhavate Dvijaha. The higher castes observe the reformatory ceremonies called samskaras. Veda Patar Bhaved Vipra. By studying the Vedas, you become a learned Brahmana. Veda Patar, by study of Vedas. Brahma Janat Iti Brahmanaha. And if you know the absolute truth, you are a Brahmana. Now, there's a purport where Prabhupada writes, I'm trying to remember that purport right now. One must become a Brahmana before he can become a Vaishnava. And 5:19:19, Prabhupada in his purport talks about Varnashram Dharma. I'm not sure if it's that one. There's another purport where he says clearly, without my remembering exactly, or it could be 5:19:19, that one has to become Brahminical, and that means study of Vedic literature. Now we know that the whole society is not going to do it, but at least the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, even if it is guna and karma, they have to study the Vedic literature. So if we didn't study, at least we should encourage our children or our children's children or the followers of ISKCON to adopt the Vedic system. That we didn't adopt it is a weakness, it's a lacuna. It means we didn't fully imbibe the message that Prabhupada taught and that our acharyas taught. So this is Kali Yuga. We are weak. Adharma has become dharma, and dharma has become adharma. If you kill animals and you have a big business cooking meat, it's business and you're glorified in society. Even the Indian government many years ago, 43 years ago, almost, I was in South India, in Chennai, and I went to meet a Vaishnava Brahmin, Ramanuja Sampradaya Brahmin, to enroll him as a life member. Somebody said, he's very rich and very generous, go and meet him. And when I got there, I found out that their business was leather exporters. And they had received a citation praising their excellence for leather export from the government of India. Of course, that was a different government than today. Hopefully, these things are not being praised, the leather exports. But Vaishnava Brahmanas putting on a tilaks were indulging in this type of a business. It's a long time ago. I forgot their names, but I remember seeing the citation signed by the Minister of Commerce and Industry of the government of India. So seeing this doesn't mean all Brahmanas are like that. There are many Brahmanas, mainly in South India and Maharashtra, but all over India who still study Vedas and Vedic literature and adhere to the principles of religion, dharmyam, sanatana dharma. We are not the exclusive followers of Vedic dharma. But we say that the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the topmost. So it's 8:15 almost. And in 15 minutes, I have to join another meeting. And so if there's any questions by the viewers, the Zoom viewers, I won't be able to answer questions by Facebook viewers, but if you type your questions in the comments section of my Facebook page, I'll answer them later. But those who are listening on Zoom, feel free to ask any questions. Jayadwaj Prabhu, you're muted. You want to ask a question? I think so. I can't hear you. You got to unmute. You're still muted. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
The thing is that when you say Vedic Dharma and Vedic scriptures and everything, sometimes it's confusing because people say, well, I have to study the Vedas. It won't be possible because the Vedas are very extensive. I will believe that you are referring to Prabhupada's books. That is the most reliable source right now in Kali Yuga. Because if you go to Vedanga and everything, we say, no, do this, do that. You don't even know what to do.
Can
let me finish. And then, if you go to the Sanatana Goswami, what is it called, the scripture? The Vaishnava principles and everything, it's so complicated that it won't be able to, before doing anything, you have to take a bath in the river. We don't even have a river here.
Hari Bhakti Vilas.
Hari Bhakti Vilas, yeah. There's so many rules and regulations, I can't even follow. So what is your explanation?
Well, in a sense, what you say is correct. I'm not going to say it's incorrect, but number one, Prabhupada in his books, the books that you're talking about, we should read Prabhupada's books, says we should follow the Vedic system. Rupa Goswami said that in the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada translated the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada taught the Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada quoted that verse that I quoted, Shruti Smriti Puranadi, many, many times. You can search using www.vanipedia.org, Vanipedia, V-A-N-I-P-E-D-I-A, which is a collection of Prabhupada's statements on different topics. Or you can use the database, which is now vedabase.io, vedabase.io. You can search in Prabhupada's books. You'll see that Prabhupada, you see, there's a very high ideal. And yes, we are Malechas and Yavanas who didn't have any Vedic training. And Harinam, what is it? Tapi papi jata chilo. Harinam eru dharilo. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's written that if someone, tapi means he performed tapasya. Papi, he's sinful, Jagai and Madai. Tapi, papi, jata chilo, whatever they are. Harinam eru dharilo, the holy name will elevate them. But when we say they're elevated, what does it mean? That means you come to the standard of Vedic culture and Vedic religion. And we can't apologize for that, or we can't change it. But there are people who are trying to change it, and that's regrettable. Now, you can cherry pick all you want Prabhupada's quotes to find his quotes that support your position, and you will find it. But if you take the totality of Prabhupada's teachings, then you have to also consider, okay, the quotes for gender equality are there, but you have to consider that there were many, many, many anti-gender equality quotes, a refutation of gender equality. So how do you balance the two? That can be discussed. But if you want to erase what Prabhupada taught about Vedic literature and gender equality, that's nonsense. And that's going on. But as far as beginning, Prabhupada's program was give them prasad and hope and Harinam. And by prasad and Harinam, they'll be purified. But then they'll come to understand gradually that the Vedic civilization and the Vedic religion, the Vedic literature is superior to any other ideology, philosophy, or religion in the world. Now, someone may say that's chauvinism. You think you're better than everyone else. Prabhupada sometimes made concessions, like saying Jesus is our guru, but we know that he wasn't propagating Christianity. We know that. Christianity doesn't allow deity worship. They're against it, and we're worshiping deities. That's just one example. Any other question? That was a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, but some people say, no, the Bible and some, the original teachings, they were not meat eating, they were vegetarians, but then they switch it and they changed the Bible.
Well, I don't know about the old Bible of the Jews, but the Christian Bible, Jesus was feeding fish to people. So how is that vegetarian? Right? He fed people bread and fish. So how is it vegetarian? And people are living in the desert. They don't have they don't have a lot of choice of what to eat. But being born in the desert is a result of sins. Just like being born a woman, it's a result of sins from a past life. But a woman's body is better than an animal's body. And a woman can attain moksha. We're not saying women cannot obtain moksha. And women are glorious like Draupadi, Kunti, Devahuti, and many other women in Vedic literature, Sita, Anasuya. There are many glorious Vedic women, but they understood. There's a letter from Prabhupada. I'm sorry, a conversation. I have it open. I'll just read it. Prabhupada was asked a question by Yogeshwara in Rome in 1974, May 27th. So here's a problem. The women today want the same rights as men. How can they be satisfied? And Prabhupada's reply, everything will be satisfied. Just like our women, Krishna conscious, they are working. They don't want equal rights with the men. That has changed now, but at that time, Prabhupada made this statement. Now they want equal rights. 20 years ago, our governing body passed a resolution calling for equal opportunities for service for women in ISKCON. So that's the desire for equal rights. But Prabhupada said to Yogeshwara, they don't want equal rights with the men. It is due to Krishna consciousness. So according to Prabhupada's definition of Krishna consciousness, excuse me, that women not desiring, excuse me, I have to drink a little water here. According to Prabhupada, the desire not to have equal rights is due to Krishna consciousness. And this whole push for equal rights must not be Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada wrote, they are satisfied by, sorry, some mucus.
Yeah, but in one sense.
No, let me finish. I didn't finish what Prabhupada spoke. I was commenting on what he spoke. So he spoke, they are satisfied. They never said that I have to go to Japan for preaching like Prabhupada. They never say, this is artificial. So Krishna consciousness means work in his constitutional position. The women, men, when they remain in their constitutional position, there will be no artificial desire for equality. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But there is same equality position in the spiritual sense, because we worship Krishna. In the Arctic, for example, men worship Krishna, women worship Krishna. And the seva, the lady does the prashan cooking for Krishna, men also cook for Krishna. So there is equality, but in the spiritual Vedic context.
See, a woman by nature bears a child in her stomach. A man cannot. This is the difference. A woman can be a mother, and there's certain duties that mothers have to look after their children that men don't have. Men don't clean up after the children. Men don't feed the children. Now, you know, there's this artificial push for that. But traditionally and practically, I mean, the woman's body is meant for feeding milk to a baby. A man cannot feed milk to a baby. So this nonsense of gender equality is going on. And the constitutional position, I didn't write that. Prabhupada wrote that. But people want to ignore that because they think there's a higher authority than Vedic culture and Prabhupada.
I understand.
We're not saying that women should not do service and worship the deities. Every temple in India, there's men and women that visit the temples. But the cooking in the temples in India is only men. That you have to be a Brahmana. Now, Prabhupada gave Brahman initiation to women and had them worship deities here in the West. I agree. So it was time and circumstance. I'll explain why. Because Prabhupada was very old. He had heart troubles. He didn't know how long he will live. And he wanted his movement to go on somehow, anyhow. Yena kena prakarena. That doesn't mean that we should change the principles, but it was an adjustment. We call it an adjustment. But there are now, because of that adjustment, there's a demand for changing the principles. So what can I say? They should understand it wasn't a principle change of principles. It was an adjustment due to time and circumstance. That's my subjective opinion. I can't force that opinion on everyone.
No, what I'm saying is, in the spiritual platform, just like we go to the temple, and the men and women, they also worship Krishna. So there is equality in one sense in the spiritual platform.
See,
I know
we are, Prabhu, we are not on the spiritual platform, we're in the material world. Yeah. In the spiritual platform, we're all women. Yeah, we're Prakriti, and Krishna is the Purusha. So that is, right now we're in a material body. You cannot leave this body on your own. Someday you will leave it. Jasomati Nandan Prabhu left, Bhakti Charu Maharaj left, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. I mean, there's a long list. One godbrother over here nearby left a few days ago, right? Hamsa Avatar Das in West Palm Beach. And there's a long list of godbrothers and godsisters that left. Once you leave the material body and go back home, back to Godhead, well, there's a Vishnu form, which is male, right? Sarupya. That's a form like Vishnu with 4 arms. But then in the highest, what we believe, and other sampradayas may or may not share this, Vaishnava sampradayas, is that Krishna's Leela with the gopis is eternal. And Krishna has that's spiritual. Okay, Prabhu, there's 3 minutes left. I have to attend another meeting. Thank you. I have to beg everyone's excuse that I couldn't take any other questions. But of course, we can always have another class. Anyway, Sunday we're having the memories program. Before I leave, I want to invite all of you to stay tuned to these channels for the memories program, Zoom, and I see that this is being broadcast live on YouTube, and I'm broadcasting it live on my Facebook page. So it's Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern time zone in the United States. It'll be pretty early in India, 2:30 in the morning, but the program will go on for several hours. So you can join later if you're watching this from India. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Punardarshanaya, see you again. Agamanaya cha.
Punardarshanaya, agamaya.
Agamanaya cha. Agamana. Agamana means to come again. Punar darshanaya. Punaha is again. Darshanaya for seeing you. Agamanaya, come again. No goodbyes. See you again, come again. Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna do